hand the stage over to Paul and your group, and I'll be over on this side of the stage. Thank you.
Ati hei wa mauri ora. He hate hawe wa wara mai. He tūhara. Nā nai a mai te pūpū taraki hiki uta. He tiki nā tu e au ki te hotsu. Kuku me mai ai. Te pau whakairo ka tau ki te wai te mata. He oku airangi e kōkiri. Ko tahi tonu te hiringa e kake ai tāne ki tiki orangi. Ko te hiringa o te mahara. Ka ki te iraira ko i o mato e kore anake. Ia te toi are ki te toiru tapu te toiru rangi te toiru roa. Ka hakaputa tāne ia ki te waitohi. Nā puhārangi nā homairangi. Te wai whakaata nahi me ka orohia ngā rangi tūhāhā. Ka karangatia tāne ki te paipai tapu e rehua i te hikimutu o te rangi. Ka turuturu i konei te tāwhito rangi. Te tāwhito atua, te tāwhito anuku. I rawe tāne i e hinga matua, i te hinga take, ki tā marama, ka waihoai ara mo te tini wakarau i kanai e, hika mai, ti hei wa mauri ora. Good afternoon, everybody. welcome you to Tāmaki or Auckland City yourselves. Tēnā koutou, no mai, hara mai, whakatau mai. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to this facility. Welcome to Tāmaki, the city. And I'm going to put it another way. Welcome to our Earth Mother, Kei Wahora. Welcome to our Sky Father, Kei Runga. And welcome to this beautiful facility. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. You have just been welcomed by Ngāti Whatu Ōrākei, the Māori people, or the tangata, take of Aotearoa, New Zealand. We are Māori, in particular Māori from Ngāti Whātua. So, all you people from overseas, ngā tangata Waiwai Tapu, we give you a special welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Ahakoa he mihi poto tēnei, even though it's a small speech, I welcome you from all our iwi. Even though there's only 4 of us here, I can see 6. We've got another 1,000 back home there, just around the corner. Nō reira, everybody from overseas, everybody from New Zealand, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Karanga karanga wai a ta whānau e. Unuhia te rito te hara ke keihia te ko mako e ko. Hakata e rangiti a rere ki uta rere ki tai. Nā ui ki mai. He aha te mea nui. Maku e ki atu. He tangata, he tangata. He tangata.
Also in Māori traditions, we also welcome your ancestors. We also welcome your ancestors to join with ours. So, in my finishing of my speech today, I will say, a te hono tātou hono, tunga te hunga mate ki a rātou, I'm talking to our ancestors. Haere, 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 go, go, go. A te hono tātou hono, ki te hungo ora. Tātou, te hungo ora. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tata katoa. To all of us sitting here today, I say thank you and welcome, welcome, welcome. Tēnā koutou katoa. So, what do you think of that? Thank you. My name is Paul Davis. I won't say it again where we're from. I'm going to introduce you to the Māori welcome, or the Māori greeting, which is by pressing noses. And we're going to ask Jordan here to demonstrate with Terry. We're going to ask you if you'd like to take part. Now, you're going to take part now. So, turn to somebody on your left or right, or both sides, and then hold your hand up. Right hand. Right hand. And press those. Okay, follow the head button.
Everybody turn to your left and greet the person on your left.
Don't be shy.
Come on,
It's all right.
Ka pai.
This tradition that we meet, I'll get it'll be somebody else. I'll get it'll be somebody else.
Thank you, Jordan.
No headbutting.
Guys, you seem pretty pushy. But I think you need a bit of waking up. We've got a waiata for you. A waiata is a song. This song is a waiata, a song of welcome. We've sung it overseas. If people would like to take us overseas, we will gladly sing a couple of waiata for them, no problem. There's class, of course. So we've got this waiata. It's most of the Māori in New Zealand have this waiata, but because they put it to their region, all right? So we're in Tāmaki, it's ours, we talk about Tāmaki. Other of our Māori relations will talk about their area. The Waikonemi would be done in the South Island. Well, here we go. It's an action song if you want to take part. No worries.
Hilda. Ringa ringa kokirikai wahoki ma.
Haere mai Tāmaki, mahi anga mahi, ka kite ngā iwi, o e ana e. Maranga kei runga, he kitia hapainga, ngā mahi o te iwi, e koro ke mo ke roa e. Titiro kaua, kei hea ko e koro, he ngaro neira, haere mo. Kia kaha Tāmaki, puritia, tamana, kia piki tonu ake, he koro ke mo ke roa e. Haere mai rā e ngā iwi katoa, kia kite aku maki e hau nei o rongo, ngāti whātua, kei ngaro koe ngā iwi e. Mohiri ki ora, ngā iwi e, haere mai. Ka hoki hutu, mahara mai ki au, haerira, haerira e. Hia wei! Ki raro!
Now, who knows anything about sport in New Zealand? Yeah, you know there's only one team going on around in New Zealand, and that's our All Blacks. And do you know that they do a famous haka? Right. Now, we're going to sing about haka, and we're going to ask you to what to take part. Okay, we'll see. This is Piripi. Hopefully he does it better than the All Blacks, but nobody can do it better than them. I'll tell you. Karita! 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 Come on! Okay, let's see everybody do that then. Big eyes. It's called a pūkana. And the tongue. I need a camera. I'll go. So that's called a pūkana. We do that for fun. And the All Blacks do it to challenge. So we're going to go through once more, and we're going to ask you all to stand, please. Everybody stand.
I don't mind.
Everybody stand. You must take part in the haka before you leave New Zealand.
Yeah, ka pai.
Here we go. Hands not here. Okay, we're going to call this shaking of the hands a winning. Okay? Winning means your nervousness. Give you a bit of nervousness. It's like when you hit the feet. Okay, winning. Here we go. Everybody ready? The first command is Gumbo! Everybody see that? What did we do? I didn't see it. Okay, put his hands on his hip and he did a squat, right? Here we go. Ladies, just take it easy.
Watch the ladies.
Sorry to say that. Here we go. Ready? Ready? Right, you're ready. I know you're ready enough. Okay, let's see some eyes. Big eyes. Big eyes. Big eyes. Big eyes. Yeah. Okay. Come on! Why did you just stood there? Not going to carry on anyway. Bring the fucking ya! Clap your time.
Awesome.
Okay, next one's a bit harder. One way tagahiria. Up your right foot. Give it a bit of noise. Okay, here we go. Even though you don't know it, I'm going to do it for you.
Follow me. Yeah, bro.
Thank you everybody for taking part. Please go up and help us out. It really is a pleasure for us to be here. Just to show you a bit of our Māori culture and have a bit of fun with it. There was a different, this is stuff we do on the marae, pertaining to our welcome when we welcome people from overseas or even just down the country somewhere. That's the sort of welcome you would see on the marae, at our home wainga or at our traditional village. Okay, so it's been a great pleasure for us to be here. Tēnā koe Jordan. I hope your conference really goes well. And I have nothing more to say except tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kua tatanei i tōku taumata. Kua tatanei au i tōku taumata. Kua tai tonu atu ki te mutunga. E hoki ai au i te hakatai. E tau ai taku mai. E tau ai taku mai.
Hara tuturu haka maua ka tīna.
Tīna!
Huia, huia!
Tai kia! Tēnā koe.
Thanks everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, I trust that if you had any after lunch awakeness problems, that has now been resolved. I've got a few very quick intro remarks to make just to welcome you here again as the local host. But I just wanted to start that by reminding you of an anniversary that today marks for New Zealand. In 2008, APNIC came to Christchurch and had an APNIC meeting, a members meeting, I believe, Paul. The hotel that was in and the convention center that was in no longer exist. They were destroyed by the major Canterbury earthquake 5 years ago today, on the 22nd of February 2011. And so I just wanted to mention that it has been a day of memorial, of remembering, of celebrating the rebuild, but also remembering those who were killed, 185 on that day of national disaster. And with the connection that this community has with Christchurch, I thought it was important to mention that as a first point. The second thing I wanted to do a bit more upbeatly is to welcome you again to Auckland. It's a pleasure for us to have the APRICOT Summit here. Our first effort to host APRICOT was made when I had fewer grey hairs back in 2005. And so it's really wonderful to see this huge event, technology conference, Internet Summit in Auckland for two reasons for us, for our organization. One is to give you the chance to see this country, to meet our people, and also so that the New Zealand internet community has the chance to learn from, share connections, build new ideas with technologists and experts from all across the Asia-Pacific region. So that's why we're doing it. InternetNZ is the manager for the .nz country code domain, and we use some of the funds from that for a range of public good purposes. We do policy work on internet technology and policy issues. We run a community grants program, and we also try and encourage forums and areas for discussion for internet policy and technology. And this conference, this event, this summit is a key part of that. And the idea is to give the internet community in New Zealand a chance to learn and grow together, to develop and to make the internet the best it can be for our country and for the world. And of course, an effort like this does not happen by yourselves, even if you're an organization. We had to secure the hosting rights. We've worked very closely with APIA and with APNIC in preparing the event. We've had a wonderful set of sponsors who are on the screen right now, and I'm not going to name them all because then I will inevitably name one wrongly or miss one out. But thank you sincerely to everyone who has taken part as a sponsor or a community supporter organization. APRICOT would not be here in Auckland without you. And that's the last point I would just want to finish on, because these are very brief introductory remarks. Auckland is pleased to host you. You'll notice that it's reasonably warm outside, and that there are people in shorts, people enjoying the beach, enjoying the restaurants and bars and cultural facilities of Auckland. I hope that you have time during your time here to enjoy this city. It is our biggest city. It is a city of the Pacific, a city of Asia more and more. So I hope that you can find things here, experiences that delight you and enjoy you alongside the serious work of the summit and the conference. And that is all I have to say as an entry, but let me just conclude once again by welcoming you here to Auckland. Let's make APRICOT 2016 an event to remember. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite to the stage Philip Smith, the chair of APIA, to give a few introductory remarks. If he hasn't keeled over with the flu he's suffering yet. He's still walking. That's a positive sign.
Yes, so good afternoon, everyone. Yes, as Jordan mentioned, I'm kind of suffering from the flu somewhat. Would like to welcome you all to the 21st APRICOT. As Jordan said, first time we've been in New Zealand. After quite a bit of trying on the behalf of the New Zealand internet community, but it's long been APIA's aim to come here. Really, this is the APRICOT for the Pacific region, and so we're delighted that we're finally able to make it here to Auckland. So as many of you know, APRICOT is our region's Internet Technology and Operations Summit. We've got delegates from all over the region participating here, but also delegates from the rest of the world. If you're interested, what's it, just before lunchtime, we had 392 delegates register through the door. So that's promising, giving us just before lunch, and folks obviously wanted to come in here to enjoy the lunch as well as the afternoon plenary session. For some of us, which is why I have a bit of a cold, we're halfway through APRICOT already. We had the workshops last week. Those were held at the Auckland University of Technology campus. We had just over 80 participants there, including instructors. So wonderful facility, we had a great time there. Some of those participants have already gone home again. They came for the training. Others have opted to stay for the second week as well, to enjoy the conference with the rest of us. As I'm sure you've seen via the website and elsewhere, we have a wide and varied program for all tastes. That's typical with the summit, where we bring together all the APIA organizations who are interested in the internet and technical operations here. But the other thing, of course, APRICOT's about social activities. You know, apart from the peering forum tomorrow, where a lot of you will be meeting each other for business or other reasons, we have social events. Tonight's social event is down at the Waterside Hilton Hotel. Please do come to it. It's a nice, simple walk down the hill from here. You might have to walk up view at the waterside. We have a closing social event also on Thursday evening. Very welcome to come to that too. And of course, the peering folks have their event tomorrow. Wednesday evening, we leave you alone. We let you to figure out your own social activities and social life. Enjoy Auckland, as Jordan has mentioned as well. So on that note, I think I can probably finish off here and enjoy APRICOT. Enjoy the week. Thanks very much, folks.
Thank you, Philip. And our next speaker to welcome you all is Paul Wilson, the Director General of APNIC. Paul?
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, this is the first time APNIC's been in New Zealand since 2008, and Jordan said he's got more grey hairs these days than he did back then. I hate to brag, but I've got less grey hairs than I did 8 years ago. APNIC works with APIA about the most important event in our annual calendar. Along with the network operator groups and the different ways that the community comes together, this is part of the way the internet works in the Asia Pacific region. Some people think that the internet runs itself, and we know that's not true if you're just talking about routers and servers, because those things don't run themselves, but it's completely true actually if the internet includes all of us and the processes like APRICOT and APNIC meetings that help us coordinate. So if you can see that we are all part of the internet, then along with the routers and the servers and switches, which we mustn't forget, then yes, it's actually true that the internet runs itself. And it's a point that I make quite often to government people, to policy makers and the like, because a lot of people these days rely on the internet who don't know so much about it, and it's important that they actually understand it. I explain that the difference between a stable and secure, fast and efficient internet and one which is none of those things is just a matter of the people involved in many cases. It's a matter of the collective capacity, the collective clue, if you like, of the people who are doing that job to keep doing the job properly and effectively to make the internet the best that it can be while it's continuing to grow and change at the very same time. So this week is all about running the internet and building it and keeping it stable and secure. And I think we all know this, so I won't stand in the way of the work that needs doing. I will say, though, that APNIC is here to help, and particularly for APNIC members who are here to serve this community. So please take advantage of us while we're here in any way you like. We'd be very pleased to meet you and to help you out however we can. because that's what APNIC is here to do. Finally, thanks to everyone involved, to Philip and to Dean and the whole APIA board. Philip and Dean and others helped for the last week. Didn't just help, they actually made happen the workshops that Philip mentioned before, and it's already been a lot of work for some of us. But thanks also to Jordan very much, and to Yvonne and all the folks at InternetNZ, and my folks, Molly and Blundine and Tony and the whole APNIC team, and there's quite a few of us here. So again, please do come and see us about anything to do with APNIC business. But finally, and importantly, thanks to everyone here for being here and coming all the way to New Zealand, and I hope we all have a fantastic week. Thanks.
Now you get to watch us all while me and Philip and Paul have a photo. Come on, Philip. I don't know why we need a photo. Which is the photographer meant to be like? Yeah?
Lots of photographers.
All of you.
So another few gigabytes.
All these digital.
Okay.
Ah.
It's white lines.
Thank you for your indulgence of our photographic experience. Look, the next thing on our agenda is a quick video from a special guest who couldn't be here today. New Zealand's Minister of Communications, the Honourable Amy Adams, would have loved to join us and give speeches because she likes giving a speech and she likes taking questions, both of which are possibly unsurprising from a politician. But she's got cabinet at the same time as us here, so instead of her in person, we get her in video for 4 or 5 minutes. So thank you to the Minister for taking an interest in this conference. She did want to come, and she did want to explain some of the work that the government is doing related to the topics that are on the agenda here. Can we do the Adams video?
Good morning. It's a great privilege to welcome you all to New Zealand for the 2016 Asia Pacific Regional Internet Conference on Operational Technologies. I am sorry I can't join you today, but I hope that you enjoy the first APRICOT conference here in New Zealand. Of course, APRICOT represents a unique opportunity for key players in the internet community across Asia Pacific to share their experiences and talk about the latest internet infrastructure issues. As you're all well aware, the internet is fundamental to the global economy, and Asia Pacific is at the forefront of technological innovation. And I think it's fitting that this conference is being held here because there are few countries in the world where connectivity is more important than for New Zealand. Sometimes we refer to ourselves as the very last bus stop on the planet. We're a nation of incredibly innovative people who've had to figure out for ourselves, often with limited resources, how to achieve what we needed to do in ways that still made us globally competitive. To paraphrase the famous New Zealander physicist Lord Ernest Rutherford, we haven't had the money, so we've had to think, and think we have. For the first time, the digital economy is allowing our best and brightest to create and run global export businesses from anywhere in New Zealand and from the same starting point as anyone else in the world. And it means innovative, creative New Zealanders can harness and create world-class and renowned ICT products and services, which they're doing with incredible success. One of my frustrations is how SOFA is ICT. In addition to global opportunities, better connectivity here at home is changing how we connect with each other and how we educate our children and how we provide healthcare and other services across our population. It also means that those of us living in rural communities like me are also connected to New Zealand and to the world. As Minister for Communications, I'm focused on making the most of the benefits that better connectivity will bring. As I've said, there are fewer countries in the world where connectivity is more important than it is for New Zealand. We're a nation of just 4.5 million people spread across 3 islands with plenty of mountains and lakes and rivers. We make our living trading with distant markets. That tyranny of distance from the rest of the world, our unique geography, our low population density, makes rolling out high-speed connectivity all the more important, but also all the more challenging. It's my view that connectivity has become a vital service for homes and businesses and is regarded as being almost as indispensable as running water and electricity. It connects New Zealanders with one another and with new markets across Asia Pacific and the world, and allows our best and brightest to export new ideas, services and products. So rolling out faster, more reliable internet is a vital part of our plan for developing a productive and competitive economy and creating more jobs for New Zealanders and their families. We've played our part as a government in that goal by investing more than $2 billion towards world-class communications infrastructure through our two major initiatives, the Ultra-Fast Broadband Programme and the Rural Broadband Initiative. The UFB is bringing fibre to the home speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second to 80% of New Zealanders in their homes, schools, hospitals, marae and businesses. We're now in the 5th year of rolling out our Ultra-Fast Broadband Programme, and as at the end of last year, Stage 1 of the UFB build was 60% complete, reaching more than 875,000 New Zealanders. Uptake's at 18.6% at the moment and is increasing sharply with each passing month. The government's also making sure that rural New Zealanders can enjoy the benefits of faster, more dependable internet through our Rural Broadband Initiative, or RBI. As UFB isn't feasible for every rural community, broadband internet with peak speeds of at least 5 megabits a second are being provided to more than 90% of the homes and businesses outside the fibred areas. And I can tell you that those minimum speeds are already sharply increasing. Almost 280,000 rural addresses are now able to connect to RBI through new or improved copper broadband and fast fixed wireless broadband. So far we've built 135 new towers and upgraded 336 more across New Zealand. So these two programs have been very successful, and as a result we're extending both the UFB and RBI to more and more broadband hungry New Zealanders. And our 700 megahertz radio frequency auctions have paved the way for New Zealand's 3 mobile companies to build new 4th generation mobile networks. Already 80% of New Zealanders have access to 4G high-speed mobile data, and we expect that number to reach 90% by 2019. These initiatives will bring the benefits of improved internet connectivity to 97.8% of all New Zealanders. And we've done that with the industry here in New Zealand, through partnerships with organisations like Chorus, the company that owns the legacy copper network in New Zealand. We've also worked with smaller wireless providers to deliver enhanced connectivity to our most remote schools, including schools in the Chatham Islands, and over 650 kilometres to the southeast of mainland New Zealand. Partnering with our private sector companies has enabled us to draw on the technical skills of the private sector and allow the government's investment to go further and do more than would otherwise have been possible. These programs are already having a measurable impact. New Zealand now leads the OECD for fibre connection growth. Our internet speeds have tripled since 2008 and are already set to more than double again. New Zealand is the country at the moment with the fastest 4G speeds in the world. So this represents great progress and certainly positions New Zealand well for our digital future. But there's always more to be done. We've also set ourselves a bold new connectivity target so that by 2025 we want to see virtually all New Zealanders, regardless of where they live or work, to 50 megabits a second. This change would see New Zealand move from 17th in the world for rural connectivity targets right up to 7th. So while we're a small country at the bottom of the South Pacific, we're punching above our weight in the connectivity stakes. The government's investing more than $2 billion into world-class digital infrastructure because we really believe that a vibrant digital economy is critical to our country's success. Last year, I launched a report that highlighted the $34 billion opportunity to realise productivity gains if all New Zealand businesses were using the internet to its full potential. That exemplifies the challenge and the opportunities we have ahead of us. We're making great progress on rolling out better broadband, but our focus as a country has to be about getting the most of that investment and seizing the enormous opportunity it presents. As a trading nation, it's critically important to us, as it is in many Asia Pacific countries, to have good, high-speed, reliable connectivity compete internationally given where we're located. That weightless economy that we're now engaging in and showing our mettle in is a tremendous opportunity for this country. It's also critical domestically because of the fact that we do have small populations spread over a very, very large area. So when we need to deliver services like health and education across our population, the internet is an absolute revolution in service delivery. As a relatively small nation, we tend to be a technology taker, as manufacturers overseas are less likely to develop technology catering specifically for our needs. So it's important that New Zealand is coordinated with the international community. For example, the work we do with the ITU to make sure our uses of particular spectrum line up internationally. This work ensures a seamless experience for consumers, where our cell phones continue to work when we travel and tourists can use their cell phones while they're here in New Zealand. In the same manner, the work you're all doing within APRICOT to spread and share the knowledge required to operate the internet within the Asia-Pacific region is a vital part of ensuring New Zealanders have access to global markets and can make the most of new technologies. For consumers in the Asia-Pacific region, the digital economy brings greater choice and lower cost. For policymakers and regulators, however, these rapid changes in technology create the risk that today's regulatory regimes may rapidly fall out of tune with changing business models and consumer expectations. To achieve this vision, we must collectively make sure that regulation is not standing in the way of the creativity we seek to foster. We need to work with the industry to make sure our rules and our policies are up to date and flexible to achieve clear public policy purposes. So that's why I'm delighted that New Zealand is able to host this conference, as you all bring your knowledge, your skills and networks to share these in New Zealand at APRICOT. So I hope you all find some time amongst your busy discussions during the conference to explore the natural attractions of New Zealand and the Auckland region. And once again, can I welcome you to New Zealand and wish you all a very successful and productive remainder of your conference.
And thank you to Minister Adams for that summary of where the government's role is up to in the sector. We're going to choose straight on because we're a little bit late. Our next speaker is Scott Bartlett, giving a keynote talk. Scott is the CEO of Kordia New Zealand and has been in that role since October 2012. He leads the business as it becomes New Zealand's leading provider of business-critical technology and cybersecurity. Kordia has prospered under Scott's leadership. The SOE continues to trade profitably after the analog broadcasting network switch off, and the group delivered a profit of almost $10 million in 2015. Scott negotiated the sale of former subsidiary company Orcon, which I believe he had previously run as CEO, and expanded Kordia's cybersecurity portfolio with the recent acquisition of Aura Infosec. Scott, welcome to the stage.
Well, thanks, Jordan. Seems to be a bit of a theme this morning that everyone that gets up on stage has got the flu. So if I just collapse. So again, thank you so much for having me. Jordan sort of gave a bit of an introduction. Kordia is an internet infrastructure and also broadcasting business. And if that sounds confusing, that's okay. You can have a look on the website to get even more confused. And then recently acquired Aura, an information security or cyber security business. Previous to that, I ran an ISP called Orcon, which was a heck of a lot of fun. And previous to that, a hosting business. So I like to think I know something about the internet, although every day I realise I don't know as much as I thought. Just a special thank you to Jordan and Andrew at Internet New Zealand for inviting me to speak to you this afternoon. I'll try not to embarrass you guys. So look, my task is to try to get us a little bit more back on track time-wise. So I'm going to cover three very big subjects very quickly. And probably do none of them a particularly great service. But we want to talk about cybersecurity, we'll talk about Internet of Things, and the changing world of TV. These are three subjects that our business is engaged in, and hopefully I'll give you guys something to think about. So let's just launch straight into it and talk about cybersecurity, because it is such a topic on the lips of everyone at the moment, not just in the internet or technology world, but pretty much everywhere. And I guess what I'm seeing is a lot of people, probably the sorts of people that are outside this room, are saying, yeah, definitely a thing, isn't it? I feel I should be doing something about that. I think generally people are getting a better awareness of the risks and that they need to do something, but most organisations, they just don't know what to do. They don't know how to tackle the subject of cybersecurity. And that's because it's just not simple as a subject for people to wrap their heads around. But here's an interesting thought when it comes to the internet. By its very nature, the internet is not really designed to be secure. In my mind, the internet is meant to be open and accessible. And so we've created this wonderful environment for these new crooks to prosper in our online digital world. And I think when thinking about the bad guys in cybersecurity, there's a couple of categories. I think we tend to get a lot of media about people that are doing cybercrime, committing an act or a hack or whatever it may be to profit. But there's also people that just do it maliciously, just for fun, to show that they can do it. And then, of course, there are the more sophisticated state actors, and don't believe for a moment that those guys aren't out there and they aren't real. But here's the problem these days on the internet. It's actually relatively anonymous. It's actually, for a lot of them, quite profitable, particularly the more sophisticated actors on the scene. It's legally dubious as to whether or not you can do anything about them, and so then there are very few repercussions for these guys. I think what also makes it so attractive is that it's easy. It's actually quite simple to go out there and hold your shingle out as being a hacker. There are off-the-shelf tools that you can pay for on your credit card, download, and start doing naughty things. And if you're not interested in doing that, there are managed hacking services that you can go online with your credit card and pay someone to do your dirty work for you, often by the minute or by the megabit when talking about DDoS attacks. The other issue is that most of the attacks that we see around the world and also here in New Zealand are fully automated. So being able to actually track who is committing them back at the source is incredibly difficult. And there are just endless examples. It sort of feels like we can't go a day or a week without another example, which for me anyway makes me sort of slap my head on my desk. And there was this, I put down here this example of this hospital in LA, I think it was last week, and they got hacked and they encrypted all the patient files. And said, look, if you want us to decrypt these patient files so that you can continue to be a hospital, we need $3 million distributed to us in bitcoins. I actually think the hospital ended up paying something there. But actually closer to home, a similar incident happened on Friday in New Zealand with one of our district health boards. And these are just some of the ones that have happened in the last few days. Another subject in the cybersecurity world that everyone's talking about, particularly in the light of the Apple case, which is going on around the world right now, is the creation of backdoors and trying to find ways into various presumably secure systems. This is a very political subject. I won't get into the nuts and bolts of the policy side of it, but suffice to say that I think we've got to be very careful here as an internet community about what we do. And I think that we've got to have a voice when having this policy discussion with governments and regulators about accessing private sensitive information. Because here's something which we've just got to keep in mind. The rules don't apply to the bad guys. Applying rules to the good guys is good, that's interesting, but they don't apply to the bad guys, and we've got to keep that in mind. And while economic and national security is critical, so is privacy. So here in New Zealand, bringing us back down to earth a little bit, our vision is if we could have a New Zealand as a bit of a cyber paradise, that would be my ambition. And the government, Minister Adams has recently launched our cybersecurity policy or strategy, which is a great first step. And as I mentioned, there's growing awareness in our business community that cybersecurity is critical to their organisations. But I think we've got to get the balance right between the stick and the carrot. I like to think more about the carrot. I think that there is a great economic and social advantage to being one of the first countries that can actually say we are cyber safe. All right, let's talk about Internet of Things. This is like a buzzword presentation, isn't it? What's hot, what's not? Well, Internet of Things, everyone's talking about it, right? Everyone's talking about this nirvana world where everything's going to be connected to the internet. Actually, IoT is a very difficult concept to start to define. But I guess for me, I kind of think about it as the convergence between our technological or digital worlds and the biological world. And essentially, this is going to change not just the internet, it's going to change our lives. The applications here are really just limited by your imagination. Is there a business case for them? Well, we'll get to that later, he says. But IoT is definitely going to be a part of our future. And the numbers are staggering. I mean, you know, you think the minister was talking billions, well, let me talk trillions. There we go, I win. There are going to be tens of billions of new objects connected to the internet before the end of this decade. And even if these numbers are 50% wrong, it's still an enormous proposition for how it's going to change policies, technology, and the architecture of the internet that we know today. So, because this is a room full of internet experts and a lot of engineers, let's talk about connection. Well, there's lots of different ways that IoT is going to manifest itself. The cellular networks are obviously trying to play a little bit of catch up. They're starting to see that these low power, low bit rate WANs like Sigfox and LoRa are starting to create interesting propositions with batteries that last 10 years. But there's also short range networks that are out there. I think the reality is this is not a VHS versus beta technology discussion. I think we're going to see that there is going to be a broad ecosystem of connectivity for IoT. There won't necessarily be one big winner. And the battle will be across the ecosystem, not just the connectivity, the devices, the user management systems, and actually, I think, critically important to monetizing IoT, the analytics. As I said, I did get told to hurry up, so hopefully I'm doing justice to the organisers, thank you. So let's just talk about television. Now, Kordia, we are a broadcast infrastructure provider. So when you're watching television or listening to the radio in New Zealand, you're probably watching it off our infrastructure. So we have a particular interest in looking at what the future is of television and how the internet is changing everything. Now, one thing we've got to keep in mind is that technology convergence in internet TV is not the same as content convergence. And we are starting to see that the movements of content around the ecosystem is actually accelerating. And just here in New Zealand, we've had the Premier League football has moved between 3 different providers in a very short space of time. But putting all that aside, streaming media is having a wonderful effect. In fact, the only thing which has ever had an effect on piracy. For the first time, the piracy stats in Australia and New Zealand have gone down. Now, anecdotally, that's due to the Netflix effect. Online streaming media services for television and movies that is affordable, accessible, and pretty ubiquitous. So that's a great thing for content owners. But we can't get away from the fact that this is changing business models. The free-to-air broadcasters will have to change and evolve. If they don't, they will die. But I think the same applies to the pay TV operators, in fact, possibly even more so. And while we're seeing some of our local pay TV operators and those in the UK make some very interesting moves, this is not a subject where you can incrementalise your way to success. You either embrace internet TV, find a way how it can match your content to your customers, or you won't be in business in 5 years' time. That said, it's not a completely zero-sum game. There is a place for different types of content on different types of platforms. So, if you think about streaming media today, streaming a TV show or a movie, Netflix and other services like Lightbox locally here in New Zealand, they're a terrific platform for doing it. But live events and big one-off events, not so good. There have been some very high-profile failures of CDN networks and other internet-related infrastructure trying to deliver a big bang event. So the Super Bowl was an example of that. You can see there that only just over 1% of the audience was actually online, and it broke 4 times during the broadcast. And then Kanye West, the poor guy. We all feel sorry for Kanye with his $50 million in debt, and then he decides to release his album on Tidal exclusively, and the service crashes, and then he's going to sue everyone as a result of it. But never mind that. The reality is, for big bang, broad events, traditional broadcast today is still really the only way to get access to your audience. But at the end of the day, it's just technology. Content remains king, and we are seeing a real driver around live events. We've seen Netflix bring in this golden age of television. You may have seen the expression been used a number of times. Well, actually, it's also creating a golden age for live events, and more live events are being pursued by the traditional broadcasters as a way to add relevancy to their platforms that the internet currently can't compete with. So, I guess the basic thing there is you adapt or you die, and you find a way to connect. Look, thank you all very much. This was a quick tour through 3 very exciting subjects, which I know will be part of the discussion here at APRICOT over the next few days and hours, but I hope that it's given you something to think about. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Scott, for a quick roundabout through a few really interesting and topical subjects. Straight on to our next keynote. Sunny Yeung has been working with Telstra for over 10 years in wireless mobile engineering, deployment of Telstra's 3G and 4G data access networks. Sunny's work has spanned diverse areas related to the wireless data core, including network monitoring, security, SDN, NFV, and over the last 4 years has been overseeing the design, deployment, and trial of IPv6 in mobile wireless. Sunny, welcome to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? That's good? Excellent, thank you. So first of all, thank you for InternetNZ for their support and the hosting of this event, and to APIA and APNIC for their continued support of the internet community. So my name's Sunny, and apart from the introduction, I've mainly focused on wireless carrier networks. So here today is primarily focused on that section, but all the details will also be obviously imposed onto other sorts of networks that you deal with. I'm going to try and make this quick. What I'm going to talk to you about is about next generation network architectures, and there's a lot of new technologies that are coming out at the moment that are being pushed upon on the engineers on a daily basis. And some of these technologies are going to be commercially released between now and the next 5 years. So really it's going to be a challenge about what are these technologies about? And each of these technologies are going to have a significant impact on users that use the network, and also how network operators need to operate. So just very quickly, really the focus is the technology, what is its purpose? What are you really trying to do? It's trying to make it scalable, available, and easier to use. And that's basically what we really want to do. Now, if we think about the history of networking, about 20 years ago, we used to still do static routing and VLANs and layer 2 stuff, right? And then eventually we changed the paradigm and introduced dynamic routing to simplify our network. So we're going through that phase at the moment where the network's starting to evolve and starting to become even more complex. So what this is all about is about simplifying the network again. The next thing is how much visibility you have of these new technologies. And what kind of impact it makes on your network. And how do you plan to make these changes to ensure that the network is optimal or even automated. All right, so I'm going to go through these very quickly. Voice over LTE, 4G, video over LTE. Also, 5G is coming up as well. That's something that's very important for carriers today. There's a lot of options to that today. Software-defined networking and network function virtualization. There's 2 sessions on Wednesday that I'd encourage anyone that's interested in these topics to go to on Wednesday morning, and you can learn a bit more about these technologies. 100 gig backhaul. So this is the fiber optic network that is used between a radio transmitting tower all the way back to the base station, but also all the way back to the exchanges. So as we move on to 4G and then on to 5G, you're going to see a significant increase in bandwidth, and 100 gig backhaul might be something that you need to have a real serious think about. Something called a virtual evolved packet core. So we've talked about virtualization pretty much in any other domain except for carriers. In carriers, we have this core, which is basically the termination points of all your users' data coming from the radio environment. And we're talking about, what about virtualizing it? See if we can reduce our CapEx and OpEx expenditure. So there's a few challenges there that we need to look at as well. Segment routing is a particular technology that's been promoted quite a bit already, but it hasn't really been implemented in many carriers. So that's starting to become very important now, but why is that? Why do we really want to use segment routing? The Internet of Things, as Scott mentioned before, is going to be a huge industry. But how do you prepare the network in order to support Internet of Things? And I can't get away without saying IPv6 because it is a APRICOT meeting after all. So these are all fantastic buzzwords, okay, for engineers and managers, but what's the realistic impact it has on the network and how you design it and for the future? How do you integrate these into a network? But the real question should be, why do you want to integrate it? What is the real requirement? I'm just going to jump back a little bit. I'm from a wireless background, so these may or may not seem familiar to you. Okay, but that's a basic wireless environment. You've got your handsets that needs to connect into a backhaul network, that connects into a core environment that's probably running MPLS, which then connects into the internet via a gateway. And in wireless, depending on which country you're in, what carrier you're using, what allocations APNIC might have given you, you may or may not be using private or public IPv4 addressing to your users. But usually internally it's all private. And the user equipment's usually allocated with a private address. And then we perform a CG NAT, carry a great NAT translation on the border router, and we also implement port address translation to increase the number of users we can translate before it goes out to the internet. Public address is obviously out, and not many people know, but private addressing is also running out. And imagine the pressures this has on the network today, and then throwing Internet of Things on top of it. It's not really going to work. So I'm going to talk about the core. This is a basic core. These technologies, you've got an interior gateway protocol and a label distribution protocol, but the two don't actually synchronize with each other. It's all about complexity here I'm talking about. So it's very complex to manage and configure all the time. And it's all just running IPv4 today. Then you've got your edge, which is all your services, so access layer stuff, running an interior gateway protocol and an exterior gateway protocol, and using a multitude of these different protocols that are available. You've got policy-based routing, which is basically to route traffic for certain users or user types. You've got virtual routing functions to separate the different routing types or traffic types, because you don't really want a management traffic to be interacting with your consumer customer-based traffic. And then you've got NAT translations on the CG NAT as well. You have CDNs located in the ISP as well, so that users are close to the content as much as possible. And then it also performs all the other services like network management systems, your DNS, your header enrichment. The backhaul is relatively simple. You may have seamless MPLS already today, or you might be running layer 2 or layer 3 VPNs and static routing. Now, all of that's in today's infrastructure. And then you throw IPv6 on top of it. So suddenly the NAT translator is doing additional functions, doing NAT 6.4 translations as well. So it's just adding more complexity into the network. And the backhaul is just maintained. Now, also thinking about private address depletion internally. So really, should the transport stay as IPv4? It really should go to v6 as soon as possible. And the core, of course, is just 6 VPE, dual stack enabled, so that you can carry both v4 and v6 traffic. So there's not much change to the core for introducing IPv6. It's just introducing 6 VPE. Not too difficult. In the edge, it's pretty much the same. Change the protocol, make it dual stack. Everything's pretty much the same. So it's actually not too bad when you introduce v6. Now, it looks simple, but it's actually very time consuming. I've done it for 4 years. And the backhaul, well, pretty much stays the same. Okay, so after that little background, go back to these future technologies. What are we actually building for here? There's all these wonderful buzzwords, and everyone wants to hook into it to reduce their CapEx and OpEx expenditure. It's back to basics. At the moment, what we see is people want more video. Now, video could be streaming, could be downloading, doesn't matter. It's just video. That's just big piles of bandwidth. So that's their 100 gig backhaul, increase it to 100. Now, that may change depending on how you infrastructure your network or design it to support 5G in the future as well. Because what is 5G? It's higher bandwidth, true, but it's also lower latency. So is 100 gig really viable? It's a real difficult question. Here's the other one. The CDN's already in the ISP. What if you can bring the CDN even closer to the user? Okay, the less hops, the better. There are other places in the network that you can place the CDN. So I was talking about latency before. We want an architecture that reduces latency and the number of hops and simplify the reliance on policy-based routing and routing protocols. Guess what? Segment routing can do that for you. You can use segment routing. And to try and reduce latency even further, you regionalize the network. So not everything is centralized. Your CDNs don't need to go back to a centralized location. You can regionalize it. Bring the content's exit point closer to the user. The next one's multiple touch points for additional carrier services. So if you're a carrier service, you might want to add parental control, or you want to customize firewalls, or you want to do TCP optimization and caching to speed things up. So today we use policy-based routing, and it makes the network extremely complex. That's where SDN comes in. So SDN, So SDN is really just traffic steering. So instead of using policy-based routing, we just traffic steer in software. So you can associate the PCRF functions in GX to recognize specific subscribers and then push them into different flows. So the next thing, lots of things need to connect to each other to do a lot of other things, the Internet of Things. All right? We just ensure that the architecture is built based on V6 end-to-end. And then bring in cloud architectures so that devices offer scalability and connectivity to go any way they need to go. So essentially you have a cloud, imagine a cloud architecture in the middle, and then everything just connects on the side. Now the cloud obviously is the real big question mark. So what do we as a carrier want to do? We want to try and push our services out to our customers as quickly as possible. One of the toughest things is provisioning systems take a long time for big carriers. The network should be able to reconfigure itself with just a simple tick box. It should be up within minutes. It needs to be able to self-recognize issues and automate self-healing and provide incentives to inconvenience customers. If I have a bad service, the network should be able to recognize that I have a very slow service and then offer me free data or additional data for a certain period of time. Simplified network management and operational support. We just want to try and reduce the amount of time it takes to operate the network. I mean, if it can automate itself and understand itself better, then there's less work for operations to do. How do we solve these things? Again, that cloud-like architecture can help with this, especially with automated tools and technologies like segment routing and SDN. Use network visibility tools. This is about the big data spill. And use that technology to feed information into the SDN network and automate it using that data. It's going to be very, very hard, but it is possible. Yes, introduce segment routing. And then we know there's more technology still coming out with MPLS, and everyone's using MPLS today. The challenge here is, if you're building a network from scratch, should you go to MPLS? Because these take a long time to implement, and then suddenly everything changes in 5 years. So, my perspective is to simplify the core, the backhaul, and the edge using segment routing and SDN for traffic steering. The edge services should just connect to the core. 100 gig backhaul, questionable. Depends on the situation. Whoops. Virtualize the evolved packet core for non-centralized locations. Regionalize it. Begin virtual machines for your network management systems and other network functions like DNS. They should be in virtual machines today, but they're not. And then place your CDNs closer to your user and enable V6 on it. because everyone is saying that we should virtualize anything and everything as much as we can to reduce our CapEx and OpEx expenditure. All right, so we can do virtual route reflectors, virtual routers, virtual firewalls, and lots of stuff here. All right, lots of different options. And yes, theoretically, absolutely you can do it. Have you thought about the throughputs in APIA? Those are the biggest issues with virtualization. It's not a simple matter of high availability. It's about 5 nines and being carrier grade. It needs to have the redundancy, and it needs to have the throughput. Personally at the moment, do not believe an x86 can handle 100 gig. So, where can we start? Something basic. Route reflector is a glorified database. Let's start with that. Why can't we put it on an x86? Absolutely we can. Firewalls. It's only a small percentage of traffic, depending on what kind of firewall, obviously. Here's the advantage. Why don't you virtualize it and then commercialize it as part of SDN, as part of your service chain? Your DNS should be virtualized already. Why isn't it? Why is it sitting on a dedicated server? The syslog, SNMP, Radius, TACACS, all of that, all of those traditional NMS systems, why are they on those dedicated servers? You can start this virtualization journey right now and put it on a VM. But before you start, it is APNIC. Are you sure the system is V6 capable? And it's very, very important, because if I buy something and I've got to wait 2 years on the roadmap for it to be V6 enabled, what's the point? It takes me a year to implement. Is the application V6 ready? Not just the network, is the application actually ready? And do potential clients need to be V6 ready as well? So it's not just about your server, your network, and then your app. Are the clients ready for it to take full advantage of IPv6 all the way through? And for a VM system to be built on IPv6. Jeff Houston gave a very wonderful speech at the last APNIC meeting about the challenges between carriers and content providers. Content is king. That's where we get our customers as well. So what is the role of the carrier in the future? And why are we implementing all these technologies? Especially when most of our traffic today is encrypted. We can't see what the user's actually doing at the moment. If the customer raises a problem, is it the carrier's fault or the content provider's fault? How do we actually carry out any troubleshooting in this kind of environment? It's a big battle between the two. So as an example, you've got V6 content in some networks, in some content providers and in some carriers that can cause issues in network troubleshooting. So example, you deploy dual stack. All right? How does one actually identify which protocol the user or the content provider is actually using? The carriers can't be responsible for an application if it fails, but the customer doesn't care, just wants it to work. So increasingly, the apps and content providers are performing those functions that are previously provided by a carrier service. So video over 3G or 4G, who cares? We use FaceTime today. Carrier provided content? We have a global source of news. People use Snapchat, let's not use that. The content provider is not concerned with how the user reaches its content. It doesn't care, they don't care. But the users demand that it be fast, and it has to be available all the time. So are carriers really obsolete? If we simplify our network using all those technologies that we talked about before, then I think the carriers can survive the next decade. Because we have to regionalize, we have to simplify, we have to speed up the network and provide value-added services or value to the customers to reach the content that they want. And that relies on the partnerships of IXs and OTTs. And really, I believe that those services should be provided as locally as possible to the users to reduce the latency overall. Now, we may have some debate about the next one. Wi-Fi is not everywhere. It looks like it is. It's not. That's why I believe that cellular services will still be required, and especially in regional areas where there is no Wi-Fi unless you go to someone's property. The role of the carrier is very much here to stay. Anyone can build pipes, all right? But it really takes good engineering skills and professionals and good management systems to maintain those pipes and construct a very solid architecture and network to provide customers and carriers a fantastic internet experience end to end. And I ask the content providers, without an IX or a carrier, how are you able to reach your potential global audience? So, yes, all the buzzwords, great for customers. Analyze, analyze, analyze. You have to. Right? It's not just a matter of picking one. What are you actually doing it for? If you go along with picking SDN, ask, do you really need SDN right now? What are you really using it for? If you introduce it, what are the long-term and short-term ramifications? Capacity and throughput are critical. Can your cloud or VM environment really handle the amount of throughput that's expected in your network? What's your hardware appliance is doing today and into the future? Can it do it in software and in VMs? So it's going to be a hybrid environment, I believe. We're not going to over-virtualize it. We're still going to have hardware components. But in summary here, really, the next generation network is lower latency, automated, simpler to manage, easier to configure, self-aware, with high throughput. And the carrier has to work closely with content providers and utilize network intelligence to optimize traffic paths. And that's the direction I believe carriers need to walk to survive in the next decade. So start planning now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sunny, for that presentation, and to Scott and to all the other speakers in this first opening plenary, which is now finished. You get to go and have coffee. The coffee is next door in the New Zealand foyer. And the next set of sessions begins at 4 p.m. So please enjoy. Thank you once again for your attention, and we'll see you around the conference.
Cansaço.